Well, we're barely 3 months into this administration, and so President Obama has had to put in place a team, a cabinet that's going to execute his policies. And it does not happen overnight, and he's been very methodical and very strategic in the way he has done it. But remember, for the last 8 years, it's been under a different administration and a different political party and a different political viewpoint. And so now we're in the process of making a transition. One of the problems that we have in this country is that there is a financial meltdown of financial institutions. And all of this has its genesis in the housing market and the way we have financed housing in this country. When I first came out of law school and went home and started raising a family, when I wanted to buy a home, then I would go to the bank would determine how much money I made and multiply it times 2.5. And so if I made $30,000 a year, then the amount of a loan that I could qualify for would be 2.5, which is what, $75,000. That was a regulation that financial institutions had. Not only would the bank have to look at the 2.5 ratio, but they would also have to look at my liabilities and determine whether or not I had the disposable income in order to make the payments. That was regulation. But under the recent administration, over the last 8 to 12 years, especially the last 8 years, banking institutions have been deregulated, which means that banks were free to offer financial packages to consumers at whatever amounts they were willing to get, and they were no longer regulated. And because of that, banks have issued loans, and they have done all kinds of creative things in issuing these loans. And now people have purchased homes that they cannot afford. The banks have engaged in what we call predatory lending, which means that the cost of these loans have been deceitful. And when people thought they were getting into a 4% interest rate, for example, it may be 4% for the first year, but after that it might have been 11 or 12%. And the mortgage payment would go from like $900 a month to $1,700 a month. But because of the manipulation of home loans, our financial markets have begun to be challenged. And so the first thing this administration had to do was to come in and to make sure that our banks don't fail. But it's not only the bank, it's large insurance companies, it's brokerage houses, it's everything dealing with finance in our country. AIG is an example of one of the problems that we have. And so the federal government has had, someone said the other day that AIG is too large to fail. And that's probably true, because they control such a vast amount of the insurance market, not just in the U.S., but across the world. And so what this president has had to do is to make sure that AIG did not fail. And so the United States has purchased an 80% equity interest in AIG. The taxpayers, you, me, your family, my family, we own 80% of AIG. And we've given AIG billions of dollars to try to help them restructure. But what we didn't know was that AIG was going to continue to give bonuses to their employees. And last Friday, AIG gave millions, $165 million in bonuses to their top employees. And never did we think that that would happen. So the question is, we got caught flat-footed. What do we do? And so yesterday, the Congress passed a law imposing a 90% tax on those bonuses. So when these people file their income taxes now, if they report, and they have to report it, when they report this bonus, it will be taxed at 90%. We had the CEO of AIG before the Congress a couple of days ago, and we asked him if he was willing to ask his employees to forfeit or to give back these funds. And so he has written a letter to all of the affected people and asking them if they would return the bonuses. I don't know if that's going to happen. We wrote it in the legislation this week that if they do give back the money, then they will be allowed to do it. Yes.
I also saw during that questioning that Representative Frank asked for the names to be released of the people that did not give back.
Yeah.
So you don't think that should be done?
Maybe I agree with AIG on that right now, because the American people are pretty upset about this. And I would not want the employees to become the target of hate mail and hate crimes in our country. And so I may support the idea of Barney Frank is a good friend of mine, and I know what he was getting at. But I would rather for a few days to pass and to see if they're going to give back the money instead of publishing the names of all of these employees, because their life might be placed in danger, because there are some people who are pretty darn upset about it, and rightfully so. I'm upset about it as well. But we got caught flat-footed on this one, and hopefully we can come out of it. Okay, I'll make the next answer shorter. All right. Yes.
This is more of a general question, but are there any sorts of steps that are being taken to educate the general public about purchasing loans or that sort of thing? Because do you wonder if ever in the future that public school systems might incorporate a class on finances, for instance, in their curriculum about teaching younger generation about making good financial decisions?
That question has two parts, and I appreciate both. Financial literacy has got to become part of our curriculum, starting at the elementary level. You know, we've got to teach people how to spend money and spend it wisely, because a dollar earned should not be a dollar spent, because we must also have a reserve. That's true in your families, in your churches, in your community organizations, and businesses. You always have to have a reserve, so that is very important. But we have to educate people about how to engage in credit, because credit can help you or credit can hurt you. It just depends on how you manage it. If you've got to pay 20% for a loan, it's not worth it, unless your life depends on it or your family's welfare depends on it. It is just unacceptable to have credit cards with 18 and 20 and 22% interest rates. That is unacceptable. But we've got to have credit in our communities, and we've got to explain to people how to use credit and to use it wisely. What you may or may not know is that under the bankruptcy laws, if you get over your head in debt, you can go to the bankruptcy court and get your debt forgiven. If you can demonstrate that your assets are insufficient and that you've gotten over your head, and there's a federal law that provides for bankruptcy protection, but there's an exception in bankruptcy. And that is your home is not subject to bankruptcy. Your credit cards are, your second home is, your boat, your airplane, your yacht. Everything that you own can be protected by the bankruptcy court except the first mortgage on your home. There is an exception. And so we've written a law a few weeks ago, and we passed it in the House, to give bankruptcy judges the authority to forgive or to restructure, preferably restructure, first mortgages on homes. It's called a cram down. Judges would be allowed to reduce the interest rates and extend the term of the loan from maybe 30 years to 40 years, and to restructure the terms in their entirety. And if we can get that passed, now it's over in the Senate, if we can get that passed, then hopefully we can bring relief to the homeowner. But we've got to educate people that there is relief in the bankruptcy courts. All right, take one or two more. Yes.
What's your view on all the earmarks that have been signed in with these recent bills?
Yeah. This comes up quite often. Let me try to explain earmarking as best I can. Earmarking has been going on for a long time by both Democrats and Republicans. What an earmark is that when the Congress decides how much money to give to a federal department, oftentimes the Congress will reserve a percentage of that money to be directed by the Congress.